The text message from WTA headquarters landed at 8:47 a.m., and within minutes, tournament officials were scrambling. Eala versus Karolina Muchova was official, and the tennis world knew exactly what that meant. For Eala, it meant facing the one opponent she had never figured out, a Czech player. 11 times she had stepped on court against players from the Czech Republic. 11 times she had walked off defeated. For Muchova, it meant facing the most dangerous crowd in tennis, thousands of Filipino fans who had turned Hard Rock Stadium into a sea of red, white, and blue. For the WTA, it meant disaster. A player on the brink of a mental block she couldn't explain. A veteran who thrived on making opponents uncomfortable. A stadium ready to explode. And when the final point landed, someone was going to break.
When the Miami Open draw was released 2 weeks ago, WTA officials breathed a quiet sigh of relief. Eala, the number 31 seed, was placed in the bottom half of the draw, away from the tournament's biggest names in the early rounds. Her projected path, Laura Siegemund in the second round, Magda Linette in the third, and then, if everything went according to plan, a fourth-round meeting with either Karolina Muchova or Victoria Mboko. What they didn't anticipate was that everything would go exactly according to plan, and that would be the problem. Eala dispatched Siegemund in a 3-hour, 20-minute marathon that tested every ounce of her resilience. The German veteran had used every tactic in the book, delays, complaints, gamesmanship that would have broken lesser players. But Eala refused to break, rallying from a set down to win 6-7, 6-3, 6-3. She followed with a composed 6-3, 7-6 victory over Magda Linette, advancing to the fourth round for the second consecutive year. Meanwhile, Muchova carved through her section of the draw, defeating Camila Osorio and Katie Boulter in straight sets to set up the collision the tournament officials had been dreading. The announcement of the Eala-Muchova fourth-round match triggered an immediate panic behind closed doors at WTA headquarters. Not because of the tennis, though that was concerning enough, but because of what this matchup represented. It was the perfect storm, the most popular player in women's tennis against one of the most unpredictable, coming off a 3-hour marathon with 390 ranking points on the line and a 0-11 record against Czech players hanging over her head like a guillotine. There's a lot of things the WTA can control, one tournament official told reporters anonymously. The crowds, the pressure, the fact that this kid has never beaten a Czech player in 11 tries, those aren't on the list. The scheduling, at least, was straightforward. Miami Open director James Blake had already confirmed that Eala would be on center court throughout her campaign. I think we're going to need them to be on center court because they have so many fans worldwide, Blake said ahead of the tournament. Here, it's going to feel like home matches for both of them. But for WTA officials watching from the control room, the scene was less a celebration and more a countdown, because they knew what everyone else was about to find out. Eala-Muchova wasn't just a tennis match. It was a reckoning. And if the Czech curse held, the fallout could be catastrophic.
To understand why this matchup terrified the WTA, you have to understand the statistic that followed Eala like a shadow throughout her career. She had faced players from the Czech Republic 11 times on the WTA Tour. She had lost all 11 matches. The streak was as baffling as it was brutal. It included losses to some of the biggest names in Czech tennis, Linda Noskova at Indian Wells just weeks earlier, Barbora Krejcikova at Wimbledon, Marketa Vondrousova at the Canadian Open. But it also included losses to players ranked well below her, like Teresa Valentova, a 19-year-old who had beaten Eala twice in the span of 6 months. First at the Japan Open in September 2025, then again at the Qatar Open in February 2026. The pattern was undeniable. Against every other nation, Eala had proven she could compete with the best. She held a 5-5 record against top 15 opponents, with wins over Coco Gauff, Iga Swiatek, Madison Keys, and Jasmine Paolini. She had reached the semifinals of a WTA 1000 event, the quarterfinals of another, and had established herself as one of the most exciting young players in tennis. But the Czech Republic? It was as if the entire nation had been programmed to break her. What was it about Czech players that gave her so much trouble? The answer, analysts suggested, lay in the Czech tennis philosophy. The country has produced some of the most technically complete players in the world, from Martina Navratilova to Petra Kvitova to Karolina Pliskova. Czech players are taught to mix spins, change pace, and use the entire court. They don't rely on one weapon. They rely on making you uncomfortable.
And Karolina Muchova was the embodiment of that philosophy. At 29, she had built a game around variety. Heavy topspin forehands, sliced backhands, delicate drop shots, and an uncanny ability to read opponents' intentions. She wasn't the biggest hitter on tour, but she might be the most unpredictable. Before the match, Eala was asked about facing Muchova. Her answer revealed the weight she was carrying. "She's obviously a great player and is doing really well," Eala said. "A couple of years back, I watched one of her finals and I was really impressed. To be put in a position to compete against her is a real privilege and gonna be a test for sure." A test. Eala knew exactly what she was walking into. The Czech curse had to end sometime, but against Karolina Muchova, the most experienced, most accomplished Czech player she had ever faced, the odds seemed stacked against her.
If anyone understood the weight of expectations, it was Karolina Muchova. 3 years ago, she was ranked number 8 in the world, coming off a French Open final where she pushed Iga Swiatek to 3 sets, and a US Open semifinal where she outlasted Aryna Sabalenka. She was on the verge of becoming a Grand Slam champion. Then, her body betrayed her. Wrist surgery, months of rehabilitation, rankings that tumbled outside the top 100. There were moments, she later admitted, when she wondered if she would ever play competitive tennis again. She spent 10 months sidelined, watching the sport she loved move on without her. But Muchova didn't quit. She rebuilt her game, her body, her confidence, and in 2026, she returned to the top of the sport with a vengeance. Her season had been nothing short of spectacular. She reached the semifinals in Brisbane, losing only to world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka. She pushed Coco Gauff to the brink of the Australian Open before falling in the 4th round. She beat Elena Rybakina, the world number 2 and Australian Open champion, in the quarterfinals of Indian Wells before losing to Iga Swiatek, and then came Doha. In February, Muchova captured the biggest title of her career, defeating rising star Victoria Mboko in straight sets to win the WTA 1000 Qatar Open. It was her second career singles title, 10 years after her first, and it announced to the tennis world that the comeback was complete. "It's been a while since I won a tournament. It's just nice to get that feeling again, and to be reminded of that victory feeling," Muchova said after the Doha final. Now, seated 13th at the Miami Open, Muchova was playing with the confidence of a woman who had nothing left to prove. She had already dispatched Camila Osorio and Katie Boulter in straight sets to reach the 4th round. Her record for the year stood at an impressive 16-3. She was, by every measure, the most dangerous player Eala had faced since Iga Swiatek in Miami last year. Muchova is one of the most complete players on the women's tour, one analyst noted. She has no real weakness. She can beat you from the baseline, she can beat you at the net, she can beat you with spins and angles. For a player like Eala who relies on rhythm and timing, Muchova is a nightmare. And then there was the pressure. The thousands of Filipino fans who had packed Hard Rock Stadium for every Eala match, turning the tournament into a pressure cooker that no one, not the players, not the officials, not the WTA itself, could control. Muchova had faced hostile crowds before. She had played in Paris, in New York, in London. But this was different. This was devotion.
March 23, 2026, Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens. The blue courts gleamed under the Florida sun as Alex Eala walked onto center court for the biggest match of her young season. The crowd was packed with Filipino fans, flags waving, chants echoing. They had come to witness history. They would witness something else entirely. From the first point, Karolina Muchova was in control. Her serve was precise, her ground stroke heavy, her movement fluid. Eala, by contrast, looked tentative. Her usually reliable backhand was finding the net. Her footwork seemed half a step slow. The weight of the Czech curse, the pressure of defending points, the expectations of a nation, all of it seemed to settle on her shoulders. The first set lasted 22 minutes. Muchova won it 6-0, conceding just 6 points. The Czech set the tone right from the get-go, dominating in the service game and powering through with her returns. The second set began with more of the same. Muchova went up 4-0, and the specter of a double bagel loomed, but Eala, to her credit, refused to let it happen. At 4-0, she held her serve for the first time, letting out a roar that seemed to release weeks of tension. She saved 3 match points, fought for every point, refused to go quietly. but Muchova was simply too strong, too experienced, too precise. After 60 minutes, the match was over. Final score, 6-0, 6-2. In her post-match interview, Muchova was gracious but honest. "Yeah, it felt pretty good. I mean, you get nervous here and there when it's going, I don't want to say easy, but when the score is in your favor, it's like you have to be cautious," Muchova said. "So a little bit nervous, but obviously I'm super happy to be here in quarters. It's incredible." For Eala, the loss extended her drought against Czech opponents to 0-12. The curse remained unbroken.
The loss to Muchova was a setback, but not a catastrophe. Eala left Miami with 120 ranking points, far fewer than the 390 she earned last year, but enough to keep her inside the top 50. Her projected ranking would settle around number 45, a drop of 16 spots from her career high number 29, but still a testament to the progress she had made over the past year. She would also take home $105,720, approximately 6.3 million pesos, in prize money, a significant sum that pushed her career earnings past $1.6 million. But the numbers only told part of the story. Eala had proven she could win matches at a WTA 1000 event, that she could handle the pressure of being a seeded player, that she belonged in the conversation with the sports elite. Her victories over Siegemund and Linette had shown growth, the kind of growth that comes from experience, from learning, from refusing to break. Still, the Czech curse weighed heavily. 12 losses now, against a nation that seemed to have her number. It extends a rough stretch for Eala against Czech opposition, Nadamo noted after the match. Her Indian Wells Open run was halted by Linda Noskova, while Teresa Valentova also cut short her Qatar Open campaign. Ironically, the same tournament Muchova went on to win for her second WTA title. The clay season was next. Madrid, Rome, Roland Garros, the surface where Eala had trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy, where she had won her first professional titles, where she might finally break through. Her next tournament would be the Upper Austria Ladies Linz Open from April 6 to 12, marking her transition to clay. The tour moves on quickly, Nadalmo noted. Eala shifts focus to the Upper Austria Ladies Linz, marking her transition to the clay season, while Muchova marches into the quarterfinals in pursuit of a third career title. For Muchova, the victory set up a quarterfinal clash with either Mira Andreeva or Victoria Mboko, the same teenager she had beaten in the Doha final just weeks earlier. For Eala, the loss was a lesson, a painful one, but a necessary one. The fans who had packed the stadium for her matches would follow her wherever she went. They had seen her win, and they had seen her lose. They had seen her fight, and they had seen her fall. But they had never seen her quit. Alex Eala would be back. The most dangerous match yet had come and gone. But the journey was
The WTA announced the matchup that everyone had been waiting for. Alex Eala versus Karolina Muchova. The most dangerous test of the Filipina's young career. It was a clash of styles, a battle of generations, a chance for Eala to finally break the Czech curse that had haunted her since she turned pro. In the end, Muchova was too strong, too experienced, too precise. She won in 60 minutes, 6-0, 6-2, extending Eala's record against Czech players to 0-12. The loss was not the end of the story. Eala leaves Miami with 120 ranking points, a projected ranking of number 45, and a year's worth of lessons that will fuel her through the clay season. She has proven she belongs on the biggest stages. She has proven she can beat the best, and she has proven that no matter how many times she falls, she will always get back up. The Czech curse remains unbroken, but curses are made to be broken, and the clay season is just beginning. What's next for Alex Eala after Miami? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to Rally Radar now for daily WTA news, match breakdowns, and stories that go beyond the scoreline. Because at Rally Radar, every day is match day.